I just got home from my day job and it was kind of a stressful day, and I noticed one of my favorite candles is really low. So I'm going to pour it. I'm going to make an anti-stress candle. But I really wanted to come and talk about an epiphany I had. But I really wanted to come and talk about an epiphany I had last week when me and my husband were talking to my daughter. But first, I'm going to get changed so that I can actually pour candle because I don't want to get my good clothes messed up. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back and I have changed. I have my candle here. I have hot water and I'm going to let the wax melt. And when it pops up, I'll take it out and pour it. Like I said, I'm going to make an anti-stress candle for my household, so it is deeply needed. But one thing I notice about myself is that I have massive belief in myself. And a lot of sensitive hearts or healers, I see a lot of them are struggling in this area. But before we get started, my name's Theresa Feline. I'm your mindfulness bestie. Let's get into it about this story. I'm going to re-pour this candle. It's going to be an anti-stress candle because I love this vessel. So walk with me through this process. But let's talk about believing in yourself when no one believes in you. So I've wanted to talk about this subject for a while, but I will be honest, I struggled with how to make it condensed or put it in a way that seemed more optimistic. But I'm just going to give you the raw truth. It's nobody's job to believe in you. Belief is an internal task. So when I say I wanted to be more optimistic, that doesn't land very well when you're already feeling defeated. And I understand that, but stay with me. What I will say is that my belief in self became stronger when I learned and started moving with trust in myself. So if you are having difficulties trusting yourself, you more than likely have been relying on others to show up or perform or make decisions for you, because now you lack the confidence to make decisions and feel like you will follow through and they will work out in your favor. This can also look like not feeling safe enough inside, not feeling secure enough inside to not only hold yourself up to the task, but you're using all of the overthinking and you don't have the energy to then perform what it is that you truly believe in. So when I have done a poor job at decision making in the past, I would take on my failures as me being a bad person. That was my belief system. So if I didn't do something perfect, or I didn't do something that was supposed to turn out with an expectation, I viewed that as failure. So when you take too many blows of not getting things expected, I started to lack trust altogether that I was able to make decisions that were best for me, that got me momentum and got me into a place of abundance. So I really had to pull back. Are you holding up other people's perceptions of who you are supposed to be? Are these truly your values, your beliefs on how you should show up as an individual? Have you actually established identity, or are you still allowing family members, mother, father, or friends, allow yourself to have influence? So we're talking about upholding belief systems, belief from, could be inner childhood work. Am I still holding myself to values of how I was raised, and taking that into adulthood and not actually doing a life audit on how I want to live my life? So as soon as I became aware that I was living a life based off of other people's opinions and expectations, I checked that shit right off the bat. We're talking about picking apart my mother wanting me to go to college and I never knew what I wanted to even do. My dad saying don't have kids. He always had to think about kids. I, for the very longest time, never wanted to have children. And that is a preference. That's fine for people who that worked for. But when I allowed myself to follow my path, I fell in love. I found my husband. He wanted children. He had a daughter previously. My children have been the best gift, the biggest blessing that I could ever ask for. They teach me in ways that are insurmountable, that you can learn inside of any workplace, any education system. These children are my biggest teachers many times, even though I am the parent. So number one, once you realize what belief systems you're upholding, you realize where a lot of your misery is stemming from, because they are not in aligned action. And if you are not in aligned action with your true self, your internal compass, then you are going to continue to see failure, and you're going to continue to see pushback, and you're going to continue to see blockages, because that is not meant for you. That is someone else's perceived identity of you from their perspective. And in return, then you start not trusting yourself to make decisions. That's where a lot of overwhelm comes from, and not being able to think straight. There's no bandwidth, because you are going to be unable to follow through on what other people think your dreams are supposed to be. And you're going to continue to hit a wall. And as beautiful as it is to see failures as lessons that they are, that doesn't mean it does not take us into a dark place where it feels hopeless. And hopeless is one of the worst things that you can experience when you feel like giving up already. I don't know if I said this in a previous video, but it really reminded me of the previous conversation that my daughter and I had. And so I had a conversation with my daughter. She's in high intensity volleyball with a club. She just started high school, so she's a 9th grader. So the level that she's playing at, it just continues to get higher and harder every year. So she was having an issue because she's used to having the starting spot on her team. And on this season, she has yet to do so. So she gets into the car and she starts going on about, other people and how the coaches are doing this, and, on a rant when we're frustrated. However, as a parent, you notice when your child is not being self-aware. And although she's 15, right? Like I was 15 years old. I was not a self-aware individual at that time. So you give them grace. However, as a parent, my job is to still redirect and listen. My daughter has a tendency to give herself the easier task. And I noticed that. She likes to do things that she knows she can achieve because it feels good. And so on this particular day, it was a little bit more frustration than normal. So she finishes her story. And so I could say, okay, I understand. But how come you are afraid to try hard things? In your venting session, I didn't hear anything about how you could take control over your situation, because ultimately you do hold the power. And this is just how I speak to my daughter, just like this. So I'll ask you the question again. I love to probe questions so that she understands how to critically think or be more self-aware, so that we are not living in a disempowered state. We don't do that. You can vent, you can have your feelings, but once we know that we have disempowered ourselves by placing our power in someone else's possession or in their hands, then we need to ask ourselves, why are we allowing it? And so I asked her, why are you afraid to do hard things? And at 15 years old, you will not believe what she said. There are some 30, 40, 50, even 60-year-olds who would not have the awareness or the vulnerability to say what she said next. And she told me, Mom, I'm afraid that I will fail. And when she said that, I paused and I really let that sink into my heart. And I looked at her and I said, now that is a truth. And I can totally relate to that, because every human on this planet has probably felt that way at some point in their life. So I bring that back around to belief, because why do many of us fear failure? It's because we've been laughed at, we've been talked about, you've been ridiculed. Someone has either yelled at you for doing something wrong or doing something bad, or why did you do that? So failure does not feel good based off of our experiences with it. And let's take that even a step further. At some point, we start to internalize that data, that experience. We start to then say these things to ourselves. That's what that self-talk is. When people have told you certain things long enough, you start to believe it yourself. So you might replace those people or set those boundaries and get rid of certain people. However, the feeling is still the same inside. Why? It's because you have now taken on the dialogue of your learned behaviors, learned experiences, and things people have said. And if you let that go unchecked, there's no getting out of it until you emotionally heal that and understand that you have now become your own bully. So the second thing is self-talk. It is difficult to lead and be confident to do something with massive belief if you are the one who is speaking negatively to yourself. Because what is required of you to have this massive belief is you're going to need the energy, the bandwidth, the confidence. You're going to need the character. You are going to need all of you to make it happen. You need the slack to perpetually move forward and move mountains. And it ain't gonna happen if you don't trust, and it's not gonna happen if you don't speak to yourself like your biggest fan. And be careful about non-movement, because that's also a decision. Do you trust yourself to move forward and fail? Do you trust yourself to not move forward and be okay with that decision? Because if you do nothing at all, that is still a decision. Or do you trust yourself to see it through and succeed? And that, my friend, is the sweet spot. That is aligned action. And I left my daughter with this. If scientists have experiments and they do not fail, there would be something wrong with that. That is how you learn. So when you're moving through life, you need to be thinking like an experience. It's a life experiment. If you don't have some failures on your record, then you are not doing the experiment correctly. Your job is not to spark your fire, because belief comes naturally. That ignite inside of you about what to believe will come when you are doing what is in aligned action. Your job, once the spark is ignited, is only to protect the flame. My name is Theresa Feline. I'll talk to you guys next time.